Okay. Hello. This is a review of the new Tamron 35mm f1.4. And I thought when I got this lens, I thought, yeah. Because, well, I've used and own more 35mm lenses than God. That's not an egotistical statement. It's pretty factual. It is factual, actually. Before I actually give a glowing review of this lens, it's actually not glowing, it's way above that. Let me first start off that if you don't know me very well, let me first state a couple things. 3 things. Number one, I absolutely detest other reviews that say everything is wonderful. It doesn't matter what you give them to test, especially when it comes to cameras and lenses. This is great, I think you should buy it too. And it's, nothing they say is of any value. Everything that they review is wonderful. Well, there's a couple things about this I didn't like, but I think it's excellent, and you should buy one too. I despise reviews like that. And before I get into how awesome this lens is, let me first start off with a precursor. On the Tamron 85mm 1.8, I savaged that lens. By savaged, I mean I didn't do it any good as far as sales went. I'm sure Tamron wanted to murder me when they heard that. On the 150 to 600mm Tamron, I didn't savage the lens, but I didn't do it any favors. not a single bit. Not a single bit. So when I hate a lens, by God, I'll tell you I hate a lens. Tamron actually said in some, and of course you never listen to press, that the 35-1.4, this one, would be its finest lens ever, and their 40th anniversary. And I do love Tamron a lot, actually. They're doing everything right. They're actually making lenses better than Nikon. Most of the lenses. Nikon still actually has some really nice hardcore metal Japanese lenses, but not a lot, but nevertheless, let's talk about this lens. And by the way, I've got a bunch of test shots, including bokeh and some images of people, whatnot, below, taken with this lens with the Nikon D850. Now, you think I actually dragged the saturation slider on this. I did. I did add some vignetting, but all these images came out of the Nikon D850, incredibly saturated. This lens, by the way, for those of you that want to know, is, to me, shockingly sharp. Sharper than piss. Oh my God, shut the hell up sharp. Very, very shocking. It's supposed to be 11.8 inches minimum focusing distance, which is really amazing. I was actually able to get really close on a lot of different stuff with this lens today. You think I drug the saturation. I did add vignetting on this. So if you see vignetting on some of these images, it's because I actually added vignetting. Here's a guy at the leather shop. At least he's got hair, right? I don't know if he's more handsome than me or not. Let's talk about this lens. I'm glad I mentioned the precursor on those other 2 Tamron lenses. 14 elements in 10 groups. Like I said, Tamron said this is the finest lens ever. That doesn't mean a damn thing because I never listened to marketing fluff from anybody, including Tamron or Fujifilm or anybody else. This lens is a lot better than my 35mm 1.4 Nikkor, which I own, and my 35mm 1.8 Nikkor that I own, and my 35mm f2 Nikkor. I own so many 35mm lenses. Actually, the only reason I get asked this question all the time is why don't you own the 35mm Tamron 1.8 that came out alongside the 45mm 1.8 that I do own? And the answer to that is, well, I thought it was a perfectly wonderful lens. I have so many really, really good 35mm lenses. I mean, a lot. Way too many. I am going to tell you before doing the final review on this and talking about this lens a little bit that I'm selling my really valuable Zeiss 35mm 1.4 lens, which I was never a big fan of, but I'm selling it to buy this lens. This lens is absolutely stunning. It pulled off a trifecta. I'm actually going to say to you right off the bat, now that I'm thinking about it, that this is one of only 6 or 7 wonder lenses that I've ever tested or owned in my entire life. And I've owned and tested a lot of lenses. And by wonder lenses, I mean it actually nailed everything across the board on a trifecta of rendering, bokeh, sharpness, and actually a few other things that I'd say trifecta. Literally, I only own 6 Wonder lenses. 6. There's some lenses that I have that are incredibly sharp, incredibly fast autofocus, but they don't render so great, or their bokeh's not so great, but they're incredible lenses. So I actually can specifically say, because people will hold my feet to the fire on buying a lens, and I never want anyone to buy anything that makes them unhappy. And I've got an extremely good track record on that, extremely good. So let's go down a little further in mentioning this. There's no color shift on this lens. A lot of Tamron's prime lenses have a cyan color shift. Soft, dreamy, cotton candy bokeh. Very, very lovely bokeh. There's very, very slight onion ringing. Very slight. Much less than even one of my favorite lenses, the 40mm f1.4 or the 50mm f1.4 Voigtlander. Those lenses are absolutely incredible. Those lenses even have more onion ringing than this. So it's very slight. It's not moderate, it's not heavy onion ringing, it's slight. And of course I have that up on my Flickr page if you'd like to take a look, and the links for those are below. Very circular, huge, puffy bokeh balls. Very, very slight bokeh swirl. Like I said, some of these, remember that I did add vignetting on it. This lens is just stunningly, ungodly sharp. I mean, just ungodly sharp. I just could not believe it. I know you can't see it here, but you can count the hairs on the back of these bumblebees. Literally, you could count the tiny, tiny fine hairs. You can see the actual sort of Van Gogh pastel rendering on the bokeh on this. This is, of course, all ambient light photography. Extremely high saturation. A lot of these shots, actually not a lot, but all of them came out much more saturated than I expected this lens to be, considering how many Tamron primes that I own and what I was expecting out of this lens with 14 elements. Extremely fast and silent autofocus. Like I said, Tamron really did pull off an impossible trifecta. I got some lenses that are absolutely incredible. Like I said, they're insanely sharp, but they fall short on bokeh. I got some lenses that render incredibly great, but they're not so damn sharp, but they have just incredible bokeh. There's a characteristic, there's a je ne sais quoi, there's a nuance about the lens that makes you want to own it. It's like, well, the bokeh is incredible even though it's not that sharp. Or the bokeh is incredible, or it's extremely sharp, but it's not that fast. I can actually say, and this is a bold statement, when I make a bold statement about a lens, people always will hold my feet to the fire on it, and that this, unequivocally, from all the countless lenses that I've used and tested and owned, is absolutely the best autofocus 35mm lens on Earth. Let me repeat that. My position, my subjective and mostly objective position, this is the single best autofocus 35mm lens on Earth. The depth of field on this at 1.4 is incredibly shallow. This is a big, heavy lens. Well, it's not that heavy. I mean, I actually like heavy lenses, but yeah, I mean, like my Zeiss Distagon, everybody wants to compare it to my favorite 35mm of all time. The only thing that my Zeiss Distagon 35mm f2 beats this at is for black and white tonality, i.e. image fidelity. By much, moderately so, but I mean, it's a low element count, manual focus, prime lens, and it's a wonder lens. But I mean, it's manual focus. It is insanely sharp. This lens is incredible. This Tamron 35mm f1.4 is incredible. You know, I've got the Fujifilm 35mm f1.4, the Nikkor 35mm f1.4 and 1.8, the Zeiss 35mm f1.4, which this is 100 times better than the insanely huge, heavy 35mm f1.4 Zeiss lens. Oh my God, I don't even know how many different types of 35mm lenses I have. At least 20 different types of 35mm. And tested many more on top of that. This lens is $900, or Nikon and Canon mount, $899. Let's just round up $1. It's $900. This is a must-own Tamron prime lens. And getting back to what I stated at the beginning of this video, I have salvaged a couple Tamron lenses, like the 85-1.8 and the 150-600, which was meant to be the competition for the 200-500 Nikkor. So I will very quickly, because I have no sponsorships, no free stuff, salvage a lens if it deserves to be savaged, or rake it over the coals, if you will, or rip it a new one, as they say. This lens is absolutely frigging incredible. I was not expecting this at all. I got sent this for testing I really don't want to send it back, but I got to. But I am selling my Zeiss 35mm f1.4 to purchase this lens. This is a wonder lens. And like I said, when I say wonder lens, I mean it's incredible across the board. It's a 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10. This lens is absolutely ungodly, unbelievably good. Tamron's statement that they're going to make its finest lens ever, in this particular instance, was not marketing BS. This lens is absolutely incredible. Let me go over here to some of the bokeh. Here you can see the bokeh on this lens. This is straight out of camera. You know you can't see it here, but if you go to flicker, very slight onion ringing. Very, very slight. My God, this lens is so damn sharp. Even in the far periphery, there's only slight cat's eyeing on the bokeh, which I actually have no problem with peripheral cat's eye bokeh. This lens doesn't have it. I mean, I'm always concentrating on bokeh lens output, and I can't think of even my favorite bokeh lens of all time, the insanely rare Porsche lens does not match this, even though the bokeh is slightly larger. I mean, it's the biggest bokeh ball lens I've ever seen in my life. But, you know, they stopped making that lens 50 years ago, or more than that. This lens is freaking incredible. How Tamron was able to make a lens this frigging sharp, with this good a bokeh, with this good a rendering and output, and that sort of pastel out-of-focus elements on this lens, it's unbelievable. And I don't do marketing BS. If anybody knows me, everybody knows I don't pull any punches in talking about... This lens is absolutely a 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10 right across the board. And I never say that about lenses. Well, I have like, out of 7,000, how many videos do I have? I got somewhere like 6,000 some videos. Ridiculous. Reviewed God knows how many endless numbers of lenses. This lens is frigging incredible. I mean, literally. And I actually like finding lenses that I hate. I was like, this lens sucks. I actually almost enjoy, you know, crummy lens reviews because I get to, you know, foam at the mouth like a mad dog. This lens is absolutely unbelievable. This lens is unbelievable. I am selling one of my most expensive Zeiss lenses to buy this. Tamron, you pulled off a winner. I know I repeated myself a few times in this video, so sorry about that. This lens is amazing. This lens is absolutely amazing. By the way, it has a huge rear element, by the way. Huge. This is also one of those lenses that I would happily leave permanently glued to one of my Nikon cameras. Not literally glued, but like, you know, hey, I could do everything with this lens. You could do product with this, close-up, pseudo macro. This lens is amazing. This lens is frigging incredible. And I'm not a person that bubbles with happiness about gear reviews, unless it's really, really awesome. But I am about this. I will shut up now. I hope you like this video review. It was honest. No affiliate links, no sponsorship. Yeah? An honest review by someone that knows what the hell a good lens is versus a crappy one. This lens isn't good at all, actually. This lens is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable! Wait for it. Wait for it. Tamron.